Hello and welcome. We are absolutely surrounded by stories, right? In the news and movies, and how we talk about certain places or people. But have you ever really stopped to think about who's telling those stories? For your Anglais Monde Contemporain course, we have a term for challenging those stories. It's counter-narratives. And today, we're going to dig into just how powerful they really are.
So these two questions, they're really at the very heart of everything we're looking at today. The stories we see, the images we're shown, they're not just neutral. Not at all. They are actively shaping how we see the world. And figuring out who gets to tell them? Well, that tells you an awful lot about power. Now, this whole topic fits perfectly into your AMC curriculum. We're in Theme 2, Representations, and we're zeroing in on Axis 3. That's all about how we represent the world through images and our collective imagination, and more specifically, how brand new stories can come along and totally challenge the dominant way of seeing things.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with some key definitions you'll need. Then we'll jump into two really different case studies, one about a single artist and another about a whole community. And we'll wrap up with some practical skills to help you nail your analysis. Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, Challenging the Narrative. First up, we need to get a really solid grasp on what we actually mean by a counter-narrative. This question right here is going to be our guide for today. We're going to explore how both individual artists and, entire communities can put forward these alternative representations, and in doing so, actually create real change in how people and places are seen. All right, Section 2, the power of representation. First things first, let's build up our analytical toolkit. Because to really analyze these documents well, especially for your exams, you need to have the right vocabulary. It's got to be precise. So let's run through the key terms. Okay, so dominant narrative. It's really important to get this. A dominant narrative isn't necessarily the only story. It's not even always the truest one. It's just the one that's the most powerful, the one you hear over and over again. It often becomes the official story or the default stereotype of a place. And here we are, our main focus, the counter-narrative. I want you to think of this as an active political move. It's an act of resistance. It's all about people taking back the power to tell their own stories and represent themselves on their own terms. Now, othering, this is a really powerful tool that's used to prop up those dominant narratives. What it does is it creates a division, an us versus them. And that can be used to justify all sorts of inequality just by suggesting that a certain group is somehow different or outside the norm. This quote from one of our sources on South Wales, it's a perfect textbook example of othering in action. It's describing how people from the outside, from the big cities, paint this picture of the people from the post-industrial valleys. Now, for your analysis, there's an even more precise term you can use here: territorial stigmatization. Honestly, that's a fantastic concept to drop into your essays. Right, let's move on. We've got the theory, now let's see how it actually works in practice with our first case study. We're going to look at how one individual artist, Hannah Black, uses her work to build these incredibly powerful counter-narratives.
Hannah Black's work is, it's intensely political and often pretty controversial. You can see from the themes up on the slide, her art goes right up against state power. It critiques major institutions like museums, and it seriously challenges the way the suffering of marginalized people gets represented.
This painting, Rien, is just a perfect example of her method. What she's doing here is called appropriation. That's where an artist will deliberately take an existing piece of work and change it. So here, she's referencing a famous piece by Ed Ruscha, but the word she chooses, rien, that's the key. That's where her counter-narrative lives.
Rien, nothing. As you know from your history lessons, this was the one single word that King Louis XVI wrote in his diary on July 14, 1789. Can you believe it? A revolution is kicking off right outside his door, and the king just notes that nothing happened, probably because his hunting trip was a bust. By using this word, Black creates this incredibly powerful statement about the huge, world-changing events that the people in power just completely failed to see.
And this quote just captures her whole perspective so perfectly. See, Black is reframing the idea of a riot. It's not just mindless destruction to her. No, it's a deeply political act. It's a way for people to take back public space and to declare their right to exist in cities that have become, for them, these dead spaces.
Okay, on to our second case study. And this one offers a really sharp contrast. Because here, the counter-narrative isn't being made by one single artist. Instead, it's created by the collective voice of an entire community in South Wales.
For generations, this quote pretty much sums up the dominant story about post-industrial South Wales.
It's this image of decay, of ruin, and it's an image that was usually forced on them from the outside. You see, it's another classic example of that term we just learned, territorial stigmatization.
So, how did the community fight back? Well, a project in the town of Merthyr used what's called participatory arts, which basically means the local people themselves became the artists, the creators. This bottom-up approach gave them the power to tell their own stories and create their own images of their home.
Just look at these two images. They capture the whole thing perfectly. On the left, you've got the kind of picture that fits that old dominant narrative, gray, older buildings. But on the right, that's the counter-narrative in action. A beautiful photograph of daffodils, taken by a young resident. It replaces that gloomy image with one of life and beauty and hope.
Okay, final section. Let's talk about you. How can you apply all of this to your baccalaureate assessments? We're going to bring these two case studies together into a clear framework that you can actually use.
For your analysis, being able to compare and contrast these two strategies is going to be absolutely key. Just look at the table. Hannah Black's approach is confrontational. It's meant to be disruptive. The South Wales Project, on the other hand, is collaborative. It's about empowerment and repair. Black takes on huge abstract ideas and institutions. The community focuses on their real, lived experience and reclaiming the identity of their home.
Now, for any written work, please use this structure. Idea, example, explanation. It's so simple, but it is so effective. You state your main idea clearly. Then you give a very specific, detailed example from the text. And then, and this is the crucial part, you explain how that example proves your point using all that great vocabulary we've been talking about.
So let's circle back to our guiding question. How do news stories challenge dominant ideas? Well, they do it by offering perspectives that are authentic, personal, and grounded in reality. Whether it's through the provocative art of one person or the collective voice of a community, counter-narratives are all about giving power back to those who have been misrepresented for so long.
And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. If these big stories about places can be challenged and rewritten, what does that mean for our own identities? How do we define ourselves? And what stories will we choose to tell? It's a question that really connects to a lot of other themes you'll be studying across the whole AMC program.